Hi, everyone. Sailor Mars here. Sailor Red World here. Ray here. Or Ray Hino here. And today we're going to talk about Freedom Day in the Forone Rikes. Now, every land has their Freedom Day, and every land makes a big deal out of it. Now, some folks are going to say, oh, well, you didn't become free. You fought for your freedom. And yeah, when you fight for your freedom, that's when you become free. You see, the Forone Rikes, formerly the Forone Settlings, formerly the Third Between Settlings, fought to get freedom that they didn't have. And they had been lorded over as a settling of the Forone Kingdom from 6 between 20 YL to 1776 YL. And a lot of folks like to think it only had to do with income toll, but that was the least of it. It had to do with all kinds of freedoms that settlings didn't have. Now, for many years, that didn't seem to be a bind. But after the Forone Kingdom had just gotten done with their war with Frankish land and took on the settled land as one of their other settlings, they didn't have a lot of gowd. So the way they thought they could get gowd was by raising kingly income toll, which you're thinking, no big deal. Now, it will be a big deal if they raise a settling's income toll, because a settling isn't a Reich. And yeah, the Forone Rikes at that time didn't have a say in the Winnemalt. They couldn't choose the house of the lords or the house of the folks. They couldn't choose the first wicker. They couldn't have a say in kingly income toll. They really didn't have the right to the freedom of speech or the freedom of worship. Or if they did, I don't know. And they also didn't have the freedom because in wartime they had to let, war fighters be in their house. They didn't really have the right to worship. Or if they did, they kept their worship to themselves. Because at the time, England still didn't really get the whole freedom of worship thing right. Or the freedom of free speech. Now, when kingly income toll came along, that was one of the things. The settlings believed that they should have the same say that the Reichs have. But they didn't. And it just kept on getting worse. They had kingly income toll taken out. Then folks ended up scathing the king in the first wicker. The king at the time would have been King George Bless Rich Handberg the Freewith. And the first wicker by that time would have been Franklin North. Roderick North. And to make a lot of things worse, they didn't do anything to make it greater. They thought, oh, well, you don't want fighters coming into your house during wartime? Gone. You don't want the kingly income toll taken away? Gone. But you do have, they're like, yeah. And then they told them that they raised the income toll on all kinds of things, or the sales toll or income toll on a lot of things. They're like, but sorry, you still don't have a say in the Winnemalt, and sorry, you still don't got a say when it comes to the first wicker, and as far as your right to worship and your right to free speech goes, well, you're going to lose some of that. And they did. They got really badly handicapped because there were those in the Winnemalt who thought that the only way that they could teach the settlings who had the real sway was to take their freedoms away. And you can't take freedoms away. God gives you freedoms, and the Winnemalt's work is to shield those freedoms. So they took those freedoms away and said, there, and you'll get them back when you start behaving. Well, that didn't work. All that did was piss off a lot of folks in the 401 settlings more. That made them overthrow their settling leaders, because some of these, each one of the settlings had their own law moat. And then they all came together and said, well, we did everything we could do. We wrote notes. We said what we wanted to say. We did everything. The king and the first wicker and the Winnemalt just don't care. They're like, well, fuck it. We're going to get our own freedom. And it wasn't smooth. Freedom is never smooth. And then they yielded then they sent a sheet. Well, keep in mind, they did send a sheet telling the king and the first wicker and the Winnemalt that they broke their deal. That they took their freedoms away. That they didn't give them a say in an income toll being raised. They didn't give them a say in about having war fighters be in their land or not, or in their house or not during wartime. That they took their right to freedom, they took the right to free speech away. They took the right to worship away and a bunch of other things. And they thought, all right, we're free now. But that was not the end of it. Because when news got back to the 4-1 kingdom and the king and the first wicker and the Winnemalt heard about it, they're like, fuck no, you just can't say you're free. So started the uprising war that ran from 1776 YL, and I guess it truly came to an end in 1788 YL. Well, that was when the 4-1 kingdom just had to let themselves know that they weren't going to win it. And the 4-1 Rikes were the 4-1 settlings at that given time had help from other lands, Frankish land, to get back at the 4-1 kingdom for shaming them and beating them in the war before all this shit started. And it was a hard war. There was many folks who died on both sides, And yes, there were many folks that would go down in yesteryear for what they did. And yes, we do know some of these folks. There's a lot of folks out there we know of. And some of them we don't know the names of. But we do know George Washington and John Adams. And we also do know of John Hancock. We also know of Thomas Jefferson and many other folks. We know about Andrew Harrison. Those are just the ones that we know of. There are the sundriest other men and women that we don't know their names, but they played their grounds and helping the 4-1 Rikes become free. So Freedom Day is a big deal in the 4-1 Rikes, as it is in any other land. And I know a lot of folks out there will say, well, how could you truly say you won your freedom when someone else helped you? Well, many other lands got help from other lands that become free, but it doesn't take away, their freedom. It doesn't take away that they won their freedom. And a lot of folks out there, a lot of other lands and fear strikers and sea thieves out there that fought that they were going to take down the 4-1 Rikes over the years, and every time they seek to do it, it didn't work. So be happy today. However you go by onlooking Freedom Day, think about how freedom is not free, and that there were brave, bold men and women who gave their lives, folks who stood up for the freedoms that they believed that God gave us and we should keep. But also, watch out about dealing with fireworks, because so many folks get wounded over the Freedom Day by not handling fireworks right. Alright? Hope you like this film. Give it a like, share and playlist it, and I'll see you later.